A young Prince George has carried out his biggest royal duty yet, joining his parents and the King and Queen at a special tea party at Buckingham Palace.
In 2025, Prince George is 12 years old, second in line to the British throne, and already carries a title that quietly reshaped his future: His Royal Highness Prince George of Wales. The change slipped into public life with little fanfare compared to royal weddings or coronations, yet it marked the moment when a child once known as of Cambridge was formally anchored to the role of heir to the heir. When George was born in July 2013 at St Mary's Hospital in London, his parents were still the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, and his first style reflected that: His Royal Highness Prince George of Cambridge. He entered the world third in line to the throne, behind his grandfather Charles and his father William, the first time since Victoria that three direct heirs stood in a row. From the start, his name and rank signalled future king, but the title was still tied to his parents' dukedom rather than to the ancient machinery of the Welsh heirship. Everything shifted in September 2022. After the death of Queen Elizabeth II, Charles immediately became King Charles III, and within hours the cascade of title changes began. William inherited the Duchy of Cornwall and, soon after, was formally created Prince of Wales.
He succeeds me as Duke of Cornwall. I am proud to create him Prince of Wales.
With that single decision, the family's styling flipped. The children who had been George, Charlotte and Louis of Cambridge became George, Charlotte and Louis of Wales. It sounds like a small adjustment, one word, a different territorial designation, but in royal language, of Wales is a loaded tag. At school, George is simply George Wales, just as his father and uncle once signed themselves Wales during their army and university years. Yet that casual surname masks a much heavier meaning. It ties the boy not only to his father's current title, but to a centuries-old expectation that one day he will likely be Prince of Wales in his own right, the visible working heir to King William V. The new style nudges him, symbolically, a step closer to the centre of the institution. This moment, subtle as it seems, echoes a long lineage of heirs whose titles shaped their destinies long before they wore a crown. Edward VII spent nearly 6 decades as Prince of Wales, becoming the symbol of a modernising monarchy that bridged Victorian rigidity and 20th century change. Even further back, the first English Prince of Wales, Edward of Caernarfon, later Edward II, was given the title to solidify the Crown's authority over Wales after conquest. Each heir inherited not just a name, but a national expectation. Prince George's new style places him on that same historic continuum, a thread stretching across medieval castles, constitutional reforms, coronations, crises, and comebacks. You can see that weight beginning to surface in where George appears. Over the last year, his public outings have been fewer than his media profile might suggest, but each one is carefully chosen. He joined his parents and sister at Wimbledon, appeared on the Buckingham Palace balcony for Trooping the Colour, and attended a VE Day Veterans Tea Party at the Palace, a deliberately meaningful encounter with living history. In November, he made a debut at the Festival of Remembrance at the Royal Albert Hall, accompanying Catherine while William was abroad on earthshot and climate duties, an echo of the moment 12-year-old Prince William once stepped into similar commemorative events with his own parents. Behind those appearances lies a strategy. William and Catherine have been clear that they want to protect their children's privacy while quietly preparing George for a life that will never be ordinary. Royal commentators describe George as undoubtedly aware of his destiny now, old enough to understand that he is different from his school friends in ways that will only grow with time. William himself has started to speak about it in public. In a recent documentary appearance, he talked for the first time about his eldest son's future as king, emphasizing that he wants a monarchy George can be proud of, one that genuinely serves people rather than just preserves tradition. That thinking feeds into what some observers are calling William's quiet royal revolution. The Prince of Wales is said to envision a slimmed-down monarchy with fewer working royals and a sharper focus on impact rather than pageantry. One striking detail in that reporting: he may hold back full titles for Charlotte and Louis until they are old enough to decide whether they want a working royal life at all. The implication is clear. In a smaller, more streamlined royal team, the spotlight on the heir, and therefore on the boy called Prince George of Wales, only intensifies. The new title also sits on top of a whole tower of future styles already mapped out for George. When William eventually becomes king, George isn't expected to inherit just one grand name, but up to 8. They read almost like a miniature coronation in a single breath: Prince of Wales, Duke of Cornwall, Prince and Great Steward of Scotland, Duke of Rothesay, Earl of Carrick, Lord of the Isles, Baron of Renfrew, and Earl of Chester. For now, these are all wrapped into his father's identity, but everyone involved knows they are really placeholders, waiting for George. The current of Wales is step 1 on that long escalator. You can feel the escalation in the way the institution uses him. At his grandfather's coronation in 2023, George served as a page of honor, walking behind the king and helping carry the heavy ceremonial robes, a visual reminder that the child in miniature tailcoat would, one day, be the man in the crown. More recently, his solo appearance with Catherine at the Festival of Remembrance, while William represented the family on the world stage, acted almost like a dress rehearsal for future years, when father and son will divide the duties of remembrance and diplomacy between them. The title, Prince George of Wales, hangs over all of this as a quiet caption, heir in training. The wider world, of course, doesn't always handle that with the same care. From infancy, there has been a Prince George effect, where whatever he wears sells out, his school bags and coats turning into instant trends. His parents have repeatedly asked the press to respect his privacy, complaining about paparazzi using children to coax him into view and about long-lens surveillance of his playtime. At the same time, the official royal communications now calmly list him as Prince George of Wales, second in line to the throne, solidifying his new title in the public record, even as his family tries to keep his day-to-day life as normal as possible. Even King Charles's gestures sometimes circle back to the next generation. On one early outing as monarch, he wore a pale pink tie covered in blue dinosaurs, a whimsical gesture that many interpreted as a playful nod to his grandchildren. A king who lets his grandchildren's sense of humor creep into his wardrobe is also a grandfather who knows that one of those children, the one now called Prince George of Wales, will inherit not just the crown but also the public's scrutiny of every symbolic detail. Looking ahead, the expectation among royal experts is that when William becomes king, he will follow his father's example and create George as Prince of Wales. With that, the boy who quietly became of Wales in 2022 would step into the full historic weight of the title, the investiture, the new coat of arms, the Duchy of Cornwall's estates and responsibilities. By then, his years as Prince George of Wales will read like a prologue: the schooling, the early engagements, the carefully curated public appearances. But that moment is still in the future. Right now, the new title lives in a space between the palace press release and the school register, between the formal His Royal Highness Prince George of Wales and the simple George Wales that teachers call out at Lambrook. It is both just another line of ink on official paper and the quiet beginning of the job that will define his entire life.